Interleukin 6, now in that regard, I'm going to address this issue briefly. Interleukin 6, IL-6, is produced during exercise. In excess exercise or overtraining, interleukin 6 can also result in inflammation and increased nociceptor transmission and pain. So you have people who go out and exercise, you get a little bit of interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 is a real funny cytokine. It can act as a Th1 cytokine, it can act as a Th2 cytokine, it's part of the innate immune system, it's kind of has pluripotential, a pluripotent cytokine. You never can nail down what it is. In later sessions we'll talk more about interleukin 6. A lot of times interleukin 6 is a big culprit in the brain, just as an aside. But when you exercise, you make interleukin 6. That's not a bad thing, it's just what happens. But in some patients, the exercising, releasing interleukin 6 can act as an inflammatory Th1 type cytokine and result in even more inflammation. So during exercise, it can actually increase pain. Now the thing about that is, what's happening, this increased interleukin 6 being produced during exercise, in excess exercise or overtraining, we get this recent fad of intense exercise. There's been this recent fad of intense exercise. You know, it always used to be you have to do aerobic exercise. Now everyone wants to do intense exercise. Some of you have done that. Some of you had good benefit from that. But I'm sorry, let me get this thing skipping around a little bit. The recent fad of intense exercise has resulted in many injuries, which are difficult to heal if the person continues to exercise. What happens is you get this person, they exercise and they're over-exercising, and this could happen in the old days too. We just all of a sudden start to see it now in people who are overtraining and over-exercising. They get an injury and they never recover. They keep trying to train through the injury, but they keep making more interleukin 6, which keeps the inflammation process going, and they don't recover. And they keep trying to, about the only thing they do is stop exercising, but once they start exercising again, the interleukin 6 causes the inflammation and they keep hurting themselves again. I have a good number of colleagues in my generation who have taken on this intense exercise. There are different names for it. I think you know what I'm talking about, doing lots of spurts of exercise, and they're going to maximum, and they lose weight if they need to lose weight. They get stronger, they have better energy, they feel better all the way across the board, and 6 months to 9 months later they hurt themselves. One guy hurt a shoulder, one guy hurt a knee. They're still not better. It's a year later, they're still not better. So Dr. Phil Maffetone, who's one of my friends and heroes, has always talked about the importance of building a strong aerobic base. You can do intense exercise as long as you have a strong aerobic base first. But some people, when they do the intense exercise, they do it and they don't have the strong aerobic base, and when they hurt themselves, they don't get better. The studies on intense exercise are mostly done in young, healthy people. And the people who have trouble with it that I see with intense exercise, the ones that I see, it's not everybody, but the ones that do too much intense exercise, they end up having injuries in their middle age or older ages, and they then just don't get better. And so this is an issue that relates to sometimes the inflammation coming from exercise. The point of all this is, if we're going to treat the brain on fire, in some patients it requires we have to address their exercise habits and training routines if they have interleukin 6 as a problem. So overtraining or overexercise can actually contribute to the brain on fire in susceptible patients. Not everybody, but you'll have patients like that who come along, and they usually feel worse after exercise. Most people feel better after exercise, they usually feel worse. Yeah, would that apply to the weekend warrior who's sedentary all week and then goes out and does the intense exercise on the weekend? And yes, it certainly could. And the only reason I bring this up about this recent fad of intense exercise, we've seen this type of pattern forever. Then they get this injury and they don't get better, and they keep trying to exercise through it, especially if they're macho guys. They keep, I would try to exercise through it. They keep getting worse. But this is an issue with a certain select group of people. Now, to be honest with you, I do intense exercise, but I do it after I've done an aerobic base. When I do my aerobic exercise, I add intensity on the end. I've learned how to do that, and it greatly benefited me. But when people go out and they don't have an aerobic base and they just do intense exercise and they're a little older, they tend to oftentimes get an injury. The inflammation from the intense exercise just perpetuates it. And these are a group of people I'm just mentioning because we've seen a lot of them in the last couple of years. Some of you have seen them. Yes, Dr. Calderon. Uh-huh. Dr. Calderon was saying, and I'll just repeat it for those that might not have heard it, that in his area, a lot of the older, more experienced athletic trainers have seen a lot of these injuries coming from this overexercise. They're finally starting to hear about aerobic base, because they've gotten so many injuries in their clients who are also tending to be older from this intense exercise activity. And it started out as a great deal and everybody wanted to do it, but certain people just don't tolerate it well, and now it's starting to become more prevalent enough that people are recognizing it. But the younger trainers and the younger athletes don't want to hear a word of it because they tolerate it better. I always talk about this. I've said it for a million years. When I played softball up to the time they wouldn't have me anymore. I was always one of the oldest guys on the team. But you don't see a lot of guys going out and playing softball after the age of 33, 34, 35. They don't play anymore. I was playing into my 40s. I think maybe into my 50s. I'm not sure. Then they didn't want me anymore, you know. Maybe I was too old and too slow, but wasn't because I was injured. What happens is these guys all would go out, they'd play real hard, they'd drink a few beers and eat a couple pizzas or some kind of junk food, and then that'd be their exercise for the week and also be part of their entertainment for the week, and they wouldn't do anything, come out and play softball again. They do that until they're about 34 or 35 years old. They can't do it anymore. They hurt themselves and they never get better. I mean, how many times have we seen that over and over again? And that's why the softball team's always more the younger people. And because they injure themselves because they do these spurts of activity, they don't properly build an aerobic base, and they also abuse themselves after the game. So they don't let themselves recover, in other words. So this is a common thing, and this interleukin-6 is one of the things that explains what's been around for a long time, and it just has come up more recently with this intense exercise fad. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's just bad for some people, and we need to watch it. Yes. Yeah, there's been recent activity that's shown that a cell phone can open the blood-brain barrier, and it stays open, you said, for an hour and a half, depending how long they hold it there. This is another issue. So we have to talk about lifestyle changes in the patients who have brain on fire, and lifestyle changes might have to do with exercise, and it might have to do with them maybe using some different types of cellular cell phone activity so they don't get the electronics near their head. And what I've seen is, in my experience, is it has a lot of individual susceptibility. These are things that all have to be considered. And some people have more tolerance to heavy exercise, and some people have more tolerance to cell phones than others. And some people can't even sit in front of a computer without having trouble, and some people do fine in front of a computer. I mean, it's variances, but we see people who are having trouble. And when they're having trouble, they're in there because they're having some issue which puts them in the category we have to analyze some of these lifestyle factors as well. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's important right on point also. Okay.